Welcome to the Athlete Advisory Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Athlete Advisory Podcast with Justin Brashear. Justin is an NFLPA certified agent and attorney and the founder of College Athlete Consulting. He's got a background as a former Ole Miss catcher and professional player in the Arizona Diamondbacks organization. And Justin helps athletes and their families navigate the business side of sports as it continues to evolve. I'm Sean O'Connor, and today Justin and I are talking about what pending NIL laws and legislation mean for athletes right now. So let's get into it. Hey, Justin, how are you?
I'm doing great, Sean. Good to see you again, buddy.
It's good to see you, too. Now, I understand that schools are starting to issue direct revenue sharing checks, and I'm curious, how should athletes distinguish between, that school money and their personal NIL business? And why do you have to keep that stuff separate?
Well, first of all, it's good to I think differentiate the two. You have in response to the House settlement with it was consolidated litigation, House versus NCAA and the power conferences.
Right.
What's been established is a system where the schools can pay athletes up to a proportionate share of their generated revenue off of athletics throughout the year. The number right now for the 2026 year, it started out at $20.5 million. It's jumped up to a little over $21 million for the next fiscal year coming ahead. And so that is money that's going to be shared amongst any athlete in the athletic department at the discretion of the athletics department. Most of those budgets are allocated by sport, and then the individual coach will have the opportunity and the ability to spend the money how they see fit. But the athletes, you made a point a minute ago about the true NIL, what we call true NIL, and that is the real publicity rights where athletes are working with local businesses or brands to promote and to market products into the marketplace. True NIL could also mean making appearances or signing autographs at different places. So it gives the athletes opportunities to do multiple things and still generate money based on their status as an athlete.
Got it. So, the College Sports Commission now requires certain deals over $600 to be reported, within a particular time frame. What does that process look like for athletes? And what can happen to a player's eligibility if that deadline is missed?
That's a great question. I think the bigger issue here is not necessarily for those athletes who are already in college with the reporting requirements. Most of the times, deals that are associated with the school in any kind of way that have to be reported, they're administratively reported by the school. So when you're executing that agreement, you can always ask the question and make sure that's being handled accordingly. But the bigger issue, I think, is for those athletes emerging into the collegiate space, those ones coming out of high school or the ones coming out of an unregulated level to the NCAA Division I level where the College Sports Commission has some authority. Those deals have to be reported within 14 days of enrollment or before the first game, whichever comes first. And in the event they're not reported, the athlete could lose eligibility until such time it's reported and approved. Now, the College Sports Commission has had some decent success, I would say, if you look just at the number and the volume of deals that have been approved. However, there's still pending a large amount of unapproved deals with millions of dollars that are still sort of sitting out there in the ethos. The College Sports Commission is also facing at the current time, or while we're recording this at least, they are facing an arbitration hearing with athletes from a Big Ten university related to some deals that the commission disapproved. So it is still very much in its infancy. But the bigger issue, like I said, is for the athletes coming into the college space, into their first season in Division I. Those deals need to be reported quickly.
Got it. I see. It's infancy, and I'm curious, when conflicts arise, I'm wondering, how do you handle situations where, say, a state law says, hey, that's a good deal, no problem. But the College Sports Commission treats it as a potential eligibility violation. How do you reconcile those?
We're still waiting on that answer. There's still a lot
Oh,
of pending litigation right now. I think what we generally look at is, NIL is legal in about 40 states for high school student athletes. And so in those states, as a very basic starting block, we want to make sure that they're stepping into a situation where the agreement is legally enforceable in the first place. If it's not allowable in the state, that's sort of where we stop. Now, at the collegiate level, anything that is going to be handled by the College Sports Commission is generally going to be not related to the revenue share piece from the school. So you're operating in a little bit different space. A
mhm.
lot of times, and as we've seen, especially early on, those discrepancies and those issues end up in litigation or in arbitration in some circumstances. So we're still waiting on that. I think, Sean, the bigger piece here would be some form or some sort of um, mesh between collective bargaining of some sort. And I know we have, our own issues in employment related, employment law in college athletics, or federal legislation. And we know what Congress looks like on a normal basis, let alone when the big when the Big Ten and the SEC can't get along.
Yeah.
So I'm not holding my breath on congressional legislation to come out to solve the problem. And I'm certainly not, besides the gridlock, I think that what we've seen is a lack of inclusion of the athlete's voice as it pertains to the circumstances surrounding what they do in college athletics. The president recently had a sports roundtable with 50 big names on there to talk about college sports, and he had 0 current college athletes in the room. I don't know how you can have a conversation that
Right.
has any meaningful production without all parties at the table.
Right.
And so
Yeah. Yeah.
we're seeing some of that, and unfortunately, until we get it resolved, I think the court system's it's gonna resolve through there in a few years. It's gonna be a bumpy road for a few more years, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely growing pains, I'd say. Let's talk, roster limits and the transfer portal. With the new roster limits, some schools are cutting scholarship players to make room for transfers, right? Just part of the game. So, is a scholarship still considered a binding agreement? And what rights does an athlete have if a school tries to take it away?
So usually, it used to be where athletes, at least when I signed a national letter of intent,
Hmm.
with the school, with Ole Miss when I went there, and then that evolved into the scholarship paperwork. Now it's a different document that's signed. It's different agreements that are signed, and those scholarships are really more year to year basis in most circumstances. There are no more scholarship caps in college sports. So, for instance, I played baseball. At the time I played baseball and up till last July, college baseball at Division I level was only afforded 11.7 scholarships to be distributed amongst 40 players on the team, let's say. So you had to parse that out. Now there are no more limitations on the scholarship amounts. There are instead roster limits. So where you used to have a program that had 42 to 45 players on a baseball roster, let's say, or 120 players on a college football roster, you're now limited to 34 in baseball and 105 in football. The scholarship limit in football, it's all changed. And so in theory, it's great for the athletes in the walk-on category in the college football world. The 86th to 105th player that we're going to be a walk-on. Now they're at least, getting a scholarship, if you will. If they're at an institution that's going to revenue share at the highest level that's possible.
Hmm.
But what you're losing is actual roster spots, jobs, if you will. If you really look at it as the marketplace that it is, you're losing jobs.
Yeah.
And every year, as the eligibility issues continue to permeate the system, and as you have, you're going to have 18-year-old young men and women graduating across the country every year. And so that you have the matriculation through high school into college, and you have this sort of bottleneck in college, it's creating issues, particularly in the roster limit space.
I see. Earlier, and I think in a previous conversation, from the business side of things, I mean, you're really some of the dynamics you were describing, Justin, were like, we're talking about these young people are essentially, small businesses unto themselves, right? I've heard the expression, uh, LLCs and cleats, right? And so, given that dynamic, what does that actually look like in practice? Especially, with the IRS paying closer attention. I mean, this whole, there's money involved. The IRS is going to be looking, right? So, how do you approach that or advise people in that space?
So it starts with a really heartfelt conversation for us, and it goes back to where do you want to be when this is all over, right?
Oh,
Where do you want to end up? And if you want to end up in, let's say Texas, and coaching football in Texas, well, let's go ahead and domicile you in Texas now. Let's figure out how to get the LLC or whatever structure that your financial team says. And that's one thing that we do is we know our role. Like I'm really good at negotiating and reading contracts and building the network between the player and the team and those kinds of things. I'm not good at doing taxes. I hire my own CPA to do taxes. I
right.
let other CPA, so we go find and vet a network of trusted professionals, CPAs, financial advisors, business formation advisors, everybody that our players may need in their overall scope and picture of what they're trying to do in life. And then we facilitate conversations. We encourage the questions and we encourage the curiosity about what could be done. And then we let the professionals do what they do. And we make sure, again, going back to the conversations we've had about, deliverables and making sure that you're doing
Hmm.
what you're supposed to do, we make sure that, the accounting is done correctly and timely, and we make sure that the filings are done correctly. And that way, again, it allows the athlete the opportunity to go be an athlete and go be go make an impact on their team and in their community and not have to worry about all these kinds of things that go on behind the scenes.
Got it. Yeah, a lot of administrative things need to be done for sure. Um, just a couple of more points I think we have time for here. I'm curious, what should athletes be looking for in contracts to make sure that, long term or rather a short term deal, doesn't give a company long term control, over their name, image, or likeness. Are there certain clauses or gotchas that they need to be looking for?
Certainly. Certainly look at the time, look at the length, the overall length of the agreement in and of
Okay.
itself. That's where we start, number 1. Number 2, one of the biggest things we look for specifically in NIL related agreements where you're going to be creating something, whether it's posting or videos or whatever it is, some sort of creative endeavor, we want ownership of that IP, right? Like
Okay.
we don't need to necessarily of our players' IP, of the client's IP. I don't need the school's logo or the team's logo, but I want to have the face. I want to have the photograph or the autograph. And we understand in some circumstances, there are going to be some legacy rights that the school is going to have access to, some broadcast. We get all that. And honestly, if our player is one of the guys that ends up hanging from a banner or a rafter one day, we probably did okay, and the player's
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
okay
That's
with
a
that.
yeah. That's a
But
win.
but
We'll
we
take
want
we'll
to
take the W there.
yeah, but we want to know what that language looks like. We want to know how it actually operates in the agreement and in practical terms related to the athlete's life.
Mhm.
And so, again, that comes back to a conversation and building a relationship around understanding what the player wants for their future and for their family and for the experience of being an elite athlete.
Understood. It's always nice to leave, with the people that are listening, uh, I don't want to say practical. I mean, I guess it's practical, but there's families out there dealing with this stuff right now, and there's things are changing, and like you said, there's court cases pending. You can't possibly keep track of it all. So I'm curious, for the families out there who feel overwhelmed by all the new rules in 2026, and more to come, I'm sure. How does your team help simplify the process for athletes and protect their future? Like, what do you have a certain I don't know. I mean, obviously an approach, or not, I don't say formula. That's a little too
Sure. Yeah.
generic, but
I was kind of chuckling because you said nobody has time to keep up with that. I do. I'm a glutton for the punishment of the filings from the federal district court in California or wherever the pending litigation is. No,
Mm.
I'm very fortunate that I have cultivated a network of excellent sources that trusted, that understand the nuance of what's going on in college athletics. All very independently successful attorneys in their own right, writers. That they do a lot in the space, and so I built relationships with them. I trust them, and
Hmm.
I ask them questions, right? And so I have access, which is great. And then as far as the people that ask me questions or want to approach us, we're real people just like you are. We've been there. I remember stories about whenever I was getting recruited by schools or agencies, and they would come to my house and mom would cook dinner for them, and sit and tell the stories, and then they'd leave, and it was like we do the next thing the next day. And so I remember being in those situations, and I always think back, like, nobody actually said anything of real substance. It was always like these flashy things,
Yeah.
and so, like, I'm a real person, man. Like, I'll sit down with you at the coffee table and we'll have a conversation until you understand it, until you feel comfortable teaching your mother or your grandmother the information, because at the end of the day, it's your career. And so a lot of what we're doing these days is trying to bring the information to the people earlier in a more digestible and approachable way so that they can control more of what happens in their career. A lot of times, especially as an elite athlete, you're going to get to a point, if you're moving too fast or you have an agent that just keeps, things keep happening, you're going to wake up one day and realize you work for them, right? Like, that's not the way it's supposed to be. The
Right.
agent works for the athlete, and the agent's job is to make the athlete's life better and not the other way around. And so I think that for us, we try to approach the information and the education to the families and those people that we work with from that perspective. We want them to be informed of what is out there for them. And then that allows them the opportunity to sort of, again, not only build their path, but then, hey, you can hold us accountable too. You can make sure that we're doing what you asked us to do. And that's how we like to operate. That's how we like to differentiate ourselves a lot of times in the marketplace with other people. A lot of great
True.
agents out there, a lot of wonderful
Sure.
people that do this, and everybody has their own approach. But I think that the most important thing is we want to give you information, and we want to make sure that the athlete has the right and the opportunity to select the representation and then create the situation in which that relationship operates.
Right. Great. Yeah. Great perspective. I mean, that's, it all comes down to personal fit as well in there. So, Justin, as always, man, I know we could go on and on here. We gotta call it a day right now, but I'll be talking to you soon, I'm sure. Thanks again.
Sounds good. Thanks, Sean.
You bet. That's it for today's episode of the Athlete Advisory Podcast. In the fast moving world of 2026 sports, your talent gets you the deal, but the right team helps you keep it. If you're looking for guidance on NIL decisions and long term planning, visit collegeathleteconsulting.com. Get in touch with Justin. And don't forget, if you enjoyed this podcast, if you found it informative, leave a review, subscribe to the show, maybe share a link with someone in your world. And thanks for listening. I'm Sean O'Connor. Have a great day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.